To others, it's a spoon. To him, it's the key to escape. First, put the spoon on the heel of your shoe, and rubbed it hard. Then he asked the guards to replace it with a clean one, and his teammates distracted the guards. On the surface, he had one spoon. In fact, there were two. Back in his cell, he got a coin. Then he tied a match to it, to make a simple living thing. Then he broke the spoon in half. Then he used a nail clipper's file to grind the coin into powder. Spread the aluminium powder evenly on the joint between the spoon and the nail clippers, and then you light a match, so that the two are perfectly fused together. A simple jailbreak weapon was born. To test its power, Mike removed the suitcase. He used it to dig through the vents, and the efficiency was greatly improved. And so it went. Mike worked very hard every night to steal the light from the wall. During the day, he took advantage of the wind to secretly empty his pockets of debris. It wasn't long before the vent was dug out and made traversable, but a new problem arose. The wire mesh was welded to the columns. It was impossible to remove it, so he took a wedge from his work. But just as he was going through security, an alarm went off. Mike calmly handed the wedge to the guard, and told him to take it back to his room to hang his clothes. In the face of such a strange request, the kindly guard refused, but when Mike returned to his room, he turned the heel of his shoe. There was another wedge hidden inside, so it was a diversion. He pushed the wedge into the chain link fence, and then he pried. He succeeded in removing the wire mesh. Then he wet the used newspaper with water. Then he pinched it into the shape of a vent. Then he painted it the same color as the wall to disguise a fake vent. Then Mike did the same thing. He made a fake human head, painted in the same colors, to make it look real. Then he put the head on the bed, and covered it up, to make it look like it's already asleep. And then comes the exciting part. The man made a dummy head out of newspaper. Then he painted it. Then he glued on some hair. Then he puts it on the bed and covers it up, to make it look like it's sleeping. Then he took down the wire mesh. Then he followed the hole he had dug into the ventilation ducts, to prevent the guards from finding out. He restored the barbed wire to its original state. At the back of the prison was a narrow ventilation duct. Mike climbed up the pipe. At that moment, the guards on patrol suddenly looked at the head on the bed. Luckily, he didn't notice anything unusual. Mike had already climbed up the pipe to the top of the building. What he didn't realize, there was no way out of the building. The only way out was a security net 3 meters above the ground. There was nothing Mike could do with his height. At that moment, the guards came back the same way. He saw Michael still sleeping. He asked his neighbor, who was painting, about the situation. While they were chatting, the guard accidentally dropped his baton on the floor. When he bent down to pick up the baton, he found that Mike was still unresponsive. The guard became suspicious, so he carefully reached out to test his hand. In a moment of crisis, Mike finally came back, waiting for the meal. Mike persuaded his 3 best friends to break out, because he couldn't do it alone. At night, Mike and his teammates climbed up to the roof of the building again. With the help of his teammates, he managed to grab the security net, but it wasn't easy to open it, because it's riveted all the way round. They need to get a power drill to remove the security net. It was in a maximum security prison, but Mike's an expert in physics and chemistry, and since he didn't have a drill, he'd have to build his own. After the concert, Mike blatantly put a fan in his instrument case. Then he followed the group as if nothing had happened, but the guards suddenly asked to check the case. When Mike heard this, he didn't panic. He even volunteered to hand the case to the guards, but the guards looked at the panicked faces of his teammates behind him. He chose the latter, and so, Mike's courage and bravery saved him from being killed. Late at night, Mike went to the roof again. Then he removed the blades of the fan. He converted it into a simple electric drill, but just as they climbed up the security fence, they were about to unscrew the rivets. They had an accident. A man climbed up the security fence to break out of jail. Unexpectedly, his teammates dropped the crowbar on the ground. The noise alerted the guard who was on patrol. He quietly came to the first floor to check, and did not find anything unusual. At this time, Mike was still concentrating on removing the rivets near the security net. Although the homemade drill is not powerful enough, but the good news is that it doesn't make too much noise. After drilling for half a month, finally solved the problem of the security net. But just when everything was ready, all they needed was an east wind. The warden suddenly came to his room for a raid. The guards threw Mike's bedding down the corridor. Then he pulled out a metal detector and scanned him. And then the warden came into the room. He lifted up the instrument case and checked the vents in the back. By now, Mike's heart was in his throat, but he had disguised it perfectly. From the outside, it looked good enough to be real. After checking it, Mike realized that the warden's suspicions had been aroused. In order to avoid exposure, he had to move quickly. During the afternoon meal, the 3 men decided to make their move tonight. Late at night, they put the dummy head on the bed. The escape begins. The 3 of them climbed along the ventilation ducts. They made it to the top of the building, but one of their teammates was too scared. He was too scared to make a move. Mike shouted a few times. He didn't get a response. He had no choice but to give up. Soon, the 3 of them arrived under the security net. They helped each other to get through the security net. They climbed up to the rooftop, using the night as cover. They hid in the darkness to avoid the searchlights. Then they put on the life jackets they had prepared in advance. They followed the drain pipe downstairs. stairs, with the desire to survive. They didn't care about the pain. They quickly climbed over the barbed wire, finally reached the sea. Then they took out their homemade airbags, and began to blow frantically. Finally, the three of them managed to escape from Yak-era prison, one of the toughest prisons in history. The next day, the guard checked the room in the morning and found that the men could not be woken up. When he went in to check, it was too late. All that was left was a dummy head. The guard blew the alarm. Soon a large number of police blocked off the nearby sea, but still not a single hair was found.